What's up, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can always follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Incredibly jacked up to be talking about Amari Rodgers today and not Aaron Rodgers today, which seems weird to say. If I would have thought that I'd be saying that maybe, I don't know, even a few weeks ago, probably would have seemed weird. But, the Rodgers stuff is obviously the biggest sports discussion in the world right now, right? Like there is so much that's going on and what's going to happen in his future. And to the point where Mike Sherman is now chiming in on things. Like we should literally make like a list of who we have heard from, whether it's been past Packers, current Packers, previous GMs. Ron Wolf there was a story with Ron Wolf from Tyler Dunn today. Mike Sherman was on an interview. We've heard from Brett Favre. Like we've literally heard from everyone, I think, except Aaron Rodgers at this point. But I can legitimately tell you, I would rather be doing a 30-minute Reggie Begelton breakdown today than discussing like what's going to happen, as the Rodgers turns at this point. Like, listen, what happens when it happens, whether he comes back or whether he gets traded or whether he retires, I will love to talk that at that point. But like the consistent conjecture of what will he do and is he going to do this and will the Packers do that and what did he say behind their backs? And it's like a TMZ gossip thing. Like, and you might say, Andy, you just did a whole episode on it. Yes, it's the biggest news in sports right now. I would not be doing my due diligence if I didn't talk about it in some capacity, right? Like it's a huge story, but I am so much happier to be talking Amari Rodgers today rather than Aaron Rodgers for whatever that's worth. But enough about that. Let's jump in because, again, that's what I'm excited to talk about. This is my deep dive. Watched 11 games of Amari Rodgers from this past season. Watched every snap of him from this past season except one game, which I didn't have access to all 22 of. So all but one game, but watched 11 games from this past season. And obviously, again, just as I did with Josh Myers and just as I did with Eric Stokes and as I'll do with the rest of the draft picks, made my observations and had kind of 12 key takeaways. If you want the long form version, it'll be posted at 8 a.m. on Wednesday. Probably as you're listening to this, it has already been posted for most of you. So you can check that out on packerreport.com. And I definitely go into greater detail over there. So again, check the article out at packerreport.com. But here is kind of my Cliff Notes version of my notes from the 11 games that I watched in 2020 from Amari Rodgers. Number 1A, the biggest thing that stood off the tape was his yards after the catch and his ability to break tackles and just make plays in the open field. And that's exactly what you're looking for from this type of player, right? That slot player who has the ability to get the ball in his hands, make people miss, run through tackles, and make big plays. It's the missing ingredient from this Packers offense. They had the deep ball guy in MVS. They've got the possession receivers, Equinemius St. Brown, as well as Alan Lazard. They have the alpha guy in Devontae Adams. They've got, a tight end that can do a variety of different things in Robert Tonyan. They've got the H-backs. They've got the running backs, but they didn't have that guy that you can get the jet sweeps, the reverses, the end arounds, the orbit motions, and then also be used as a receiver. And then, some of the quick bubble screens, like the guy that gets the ball in his hands and just makes plays. That's what Amari Rodgers can ultimately bring to the table. 613 yards this past season, 335 yards the year before that, 405 yards the year before that, 1,353 total receiving yards. That's just after the catch. That has nothing to do with his total yardage. Those are just yards after the catch. In the past 3 seasons, 1,353 yards just after the catch. 60% of his total yardage, or receiving yardage, I should say, in 2020 was after the catch. Like, this is a guy that you get the ball in his hands and you let him go to work. 9 broken tackles this past season. And that's the thing that I really love about him. There are those slot gadget guys that are, the jitterbug types that are trying to make people miss. He can do that, but he can also run right through you, and had multiple different occasions on tape where he ran through tackles. And you might think 5'9" slot receiver and you might think small. He is short. He is not small. He has a very strong lower half. He can run through tackles, break tackles. He's tough. He's physical. He's aggressive. He's got all those intangibles that you would want. And just somebody that People have compared him to Randall Cobb or like Ty Montgomery. I think he has the Randall Cobb receiving ability. I'm not saying that maybe quite the high end that Cobb had, but he has that sort of ability with the Ty Montgomery sort of build with kind of that thicker lower half, the ability to return kicks, be a running back. I think Amari Rodgers can do a lot of that stuff too. So, but again, the 1A thing that stood off the page was his yards after the catch and broken tackle ability. Next up, he's not just a gadget guy. So yes, he's going to line up in the slot. He's going to do that Tyler Ervin role, probably return some kicks, return some punts, maybe line up as a running back. He's going to be a gadget guy, but he's so much more than that. With Tyler Ervin, when you line him up in slot, he can do that stuff. But if you line up a corner against him, which most teams did, he can't win those routes one-on-one against NFL corners. He's not a receiver, right? Tavon Austin, same thing. He was basically a glorified, running back at that point. Austin was never a guy that was going to win with route running, and he's well past his prime at this point anyway. This is a player in Amari Rodgers that can do all those gadget things that we talked about, but can also line up against NFL corners and win one-on-one when he needs to. He is adept at route running, adept enough at route running, can win in the slot, can win outside, and can win in a variety of different ways. And I think the best thing about him is that he wins all over the field. If you want to do those bubble screens and the jet motions and the tosses and then handing him off in the backfield, he can do all of that. You want to get him on the short ins and outs, the quick slants, the quick dig route, he can do all of that. You want to do, kind of those intermediate crossing routes where they kind of go deeper down the field, usually off of play action. He had multiple plays like that on tape where he gained separation. How about a straight 9 route, a go route? Absolutely. Multiple plays on tape where he just ran right past defenders and got separation on a deep ball. Deep post, he showed that. He showed every route that you would want to be able to run in Matt LaFleur's offense, that he has the ability to run it. So yes, he is a gadget guy, but no, he is not just a gadget guy. On the flip side, one of the downsides of his game, especially in 2020, was some of the concentration drops. And he had 6 in 2020 alone. Now, he only had 10 in his career, which is still maybe not great, but you think of 6 in 2020, it means he only had 4 in his career up until that point, which you would have said great hands, no questions asked. But 10 drops in his career and 6 in 2020, and it was more just concentration drops. You might think, well, all right, 5'9" guy, shorter player, probably small hands. Not at all. Only 2 players in the top of the draft at receiver had bigger hands than him, Jamar Chase and De'Ami Brown, and both of them only had an 1/8 of an inch larger hands than him. He had basically as big a hands or bigger than basically every receiver at the top of this draft. So it's not a hand size issue. This is definitely just, he had some plays where he dropped the ball and he shouldn't have. And one of the things I noticed is you get him involved early in the game and get him a catch early, he seems to just gain some confidence and kind of go from there. So you actually started seeing it, especially in the middle of the season. They started getting him more touches just early in the game. I don't know if that played, I can say for sure that played a part, but it seemed to be something where if he got involved early, he seemed to be a little bit more sure-handed as the game went on and just kind of maybe more involved. So that's something that maybe they can work on. And they work on just hands and concentration almost every day at practice with those receivers. Hopefully it's something that kind of goes away over time. Maybe my favorite aspect of Amari Rodgers is his blocking ability. And about a few months ago, I was doing the podcast with Perry Goldstein, and we were doing bold predictions for the offseason. And one of my bold predictions was that, and this was in March, I think it was like early March. One of my bold predictions was that the Packers would draft Amari Rodgers. It had nothing to do with him as a wide receiver. I pop on the tape of him, and the first thing I notice is not only is he a willing blocker, he is a impressive blocker, to the point where there are multiple plays on tape where he is taking cornerbacks and he is moving them off the sidelines, which is crazy. Like every once in a while, you'll see offensive tackles like blocking people out of bounds. This is a 5'9" slot receiver who is literally blocking dudes out of bounds. He will seal, corners when he needs to. He can help on some of those bubble screens as a blocker if you put him in that position. He will dig out linebackers. He will attack safeties. He does not care. If you are out there, he will block you. 5'9" or not 5'9", it does not matter. He will take names and he will literally block people into oblivion. And if you're not ready for it, if you're not expecting it, he will literally flatten you. So really fun player to watch when it comes to blocking. And obviously we know that's a prerequisite to playing in Matt LaFleur's system. He'll certainly fit right in. Special teams, I think he's going to be a solid kick returner, punt returner for this team. He didn't do a ton of kick returning at Clemson, did a lot more punt returning, like a 7.8 yard average, which is basically what Tyler Ervin was doing as a Packer when he was healthy. Solid, not spectacular. He had one punt return for a touchdown. Again, only 2 kick returns in his career, but I definitely think he has the capability of doing both. And I think the nice thing here is you don't have to add like another player to the roster to just be a returner or activate somebody on game day just so they can return. He's going to be able to handle both of those, and I think he's going to be good at both. Never going to be probably a game breaker. We're not talking about Desmond Howard or Devin Hester here. We're talking about a good, solid returner who's going to make smart decisions, take care of the football, get positive yardage, and let the offense do the heavy lifting, right? So is he dynamic in that regards? No. Is he capable? More than so. Yes, he can absolutely take on that job. Again, one of the other downsides is just contested catches, right? 5'9", not a large frame. He uses his frame to the best of his ability, but when you get him on bigger, more physical, corners and they're just matched up, this is not a guy that you're going to throw 50-50 balls to, right? So at some point when you're 5'9" slot type receiver, and again, he can do more than that, he can line up on the outside, but your overall upside is limited somewhat to what you can do out on the field. He's just not going to be the guy that, if Rodgers is bailed and needs to throw up a ball, it's not going to Amari Rodgers, right? You throw him a 50-50 contested ball. A lot of times in college, he was not coming down with those. And that's okay. Not everyone has to have the same skill sets and abilities. And Matt LaFleur is a master at scheming receivers open, using bunch formations. And Amari Rodgers can win on his own in a variety of different ways, whether it be with speed, agility, route running, and things like that. So he doesn't have to be a contested catch guy. And again, that's why you want different flavors of wide receiver. You can have your 6'5", 6'6" guys and, Equanimous St. Brown and Devin Funches. You can have your alpha guy in Devontae Adams, your speed guy in MVS. And then you can have your gadget guy in Amari Rodgers. It doesn't have to be the same body type for every receiver. There's a place for all of them. And again, Amari Rodgers seemed to be the one that was missing, and now they have him. Toughness over the middle, this just kind of goes again to that tough mentality. He absolutely not only can win over the middle and take the hit, but he knows how to find holes in zones as well. Sit down in them, find that open spot, create space, and then create after the catch. It takes a special player to, be that player that wants to make a living over the middle of the field, especially when you're a 5'9" wide receiver. And you just have to have that mentality. And I get that the NFL rules have changed over the course of the last couple decades, and it's not like you've got bloody-nosed Chuck Cecil coming and laying people out quite as much in the middle of the field, but it's still not a picnic making those catches over the middle of the field. He has no issues doing it, and there's multiple times on tape where he did it, took the lick, hung onto the football. And again, that's just something that you have to be capable of, whether you're 5'9" or not. North-south player, right? So somebody that, again, we talked earlier about those gadget type players where they like to, maybe run a little bit east and west and maybe try to make 100 jukes. Amari Rodgers can make people miss in the open field, but he's running at you north and south and getting the most yardage possible. And then it's subtle movements. It's quick jukes. It's a head fake one way and then going the other way. And also he has the threat again, as he's shown on tape, of he'll just run people over and run through people and run through tackles. So, as the corners or defender is trying to make this decision of what Amari Rodgers is going to do, sometimes he's thinking he gets flat-footed and Amari Rodgers is running at him full speed, and all of a sudden he stops and thinks, his feet freeze, and Rodgers is going right by him. So again, it's the subtle movements that I really love, and it's his ability to quickly get north and south and quickly accelerate out of his breaks that make him, again, so effective as a yards after the catch player. I also think, again, he doesn't have that wide frame and the long arms and things like that, but he does the best that he can to adjust to the football and make some pretty impressive catches. And there were a couple throws that were behind him where he made kind of like just a bizarro adjustment behind him and full extension and caught the ball. Another sliding catch against Ohio State that was just a severely underthrown ball that he made a great adjustment to. He finds ways to come down with the football. And again, I think Steve Smith was always a great example of that as a shorter wide receiver. He just was going to go up and get the football and fight through it. And again, Rodgers isn't that. He's not the contested catch guy, but you throw it to him, and if it's not contested, he's going to find a way to contort his body and get to the football. So another just, weapon he has in his arsenal. And then last but not least is game speed. I think this is one of the things where you look at his 40 time and you see Rondale Moore and all these guys running 4.3 40s. And then all of a sudden you see Amari Rodgers at 4.52 and you're like, oh, that's maybe kind of disappointing. Throw it all out the window. those subtle movements, the change of direction, the quick acceleration, all of those things show up on tape. He has game speed. And a lot of times that matters more. Devontae Adams was a 4.5 40 guy. Does it matter? No, because he plays faster than everyone else on Sundays. Amari Rodgers is that type of player. Take his time speed and just throw it completely away because it literally does not matter. You watch him win with speed on multiple different ways, whether it's, again, making people miss, whether it's, again, taking some of those plays in the backfield and getting positive yardage, the return ability, running past players on vertical routes. You see it show up in a variety of different ways. Do I care what he tested in this scenario? No, because I've seen it. I've seen him win with speed in every way imaginable at the wide receiver position in college. Is it different speed in the NFL? Yes, but I have no concerns as to what he's going to be able to accomplish and do not think that his 4.5 240 is going to affect him in the absolute slightest. So what do you get overall? I know that the cliche is to compare him to Randall Cobb. I see a lot of Randall Cobb in his game. Sometimes the most obvious comparison is the appropriate comparison. I think I've kind of said he's like 75% Randall Cobb, 25% Ty Montgomery. I think that's exactly what you get, both in just what they can do on the field, but also in like overall type of player, right? Like Cobb was an early second guy. Montgomery was a late third. Amari Rodgers is right kind of in the middle of that, is like an early to mid third round guy. I think you get right in the realm of that, where he's probably not the high-end player that Cobb was. He brings a lot more to the table, in my opinion, than Ty Montgomery did. I think you end up with someone right in the middle and a guy that's perfectly fit to fit in the scheme for Matt LaFleur and the perfect missing piece for this already number one rated offense. Fun player. I think you're going to absolutely love him on Sundays. One of the players that I really enjoyed studying during this draft and enjoyed it even more as I did this deep dive. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please make sure to subscribe and like. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow with a brand new episode that hopefully you'll enjoy as well. That does it for me today, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.